Hey, good night, everybody. Welcome to our Health Pros live edition of Let's Talk. My name is Jan Paxman. I'm a registered nurse from American Fork, Utah, and I just passed my 16-year health anniversary. So grateful to be here with you tonight. And I have two lovely health professionals with me tonight, and we are going to have the best time doing live Q&A. So we welcome everybody who's watching live, those who will watch the recorded playback, and those who are listening to podcasts. We're so happy to have you and just so glad to be a part of this Optavia community with you. So I want to introduce my beautiful guests tonight. First, we have Dr. Delia Garcia. She's been coaching longer than I have. She was here when I came along, and I've always
20 years, Dan. 20 years. Yeah.
And she's been an oncologist for how many years now, Dee?
35 years. Yeah.
Okay, so she must have graduated medical school when she was about 10, I'm guessing. So wonderful to have you here, Dee. We love you and appreciate your wealth of wisdom that you always share. So thank you. She's also the mother of 3 beautiful children, and she lives, remind me where you're coming from.
St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis, Missouri. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you get hit with the snow?
In my neighborhood, 12 inches. Yeah, 12 inches, which snow in St. Louis is rare. You know, sometimes it'll snow and people always advise, oh, don't even, shovel your drive because it'll be melted in 2 days. Well, not this one. So, yeah.
Well, grateful for the water, but oh boy, that's crazy. We're glad you're able to be on with us tonight. Welcome everyone. Those of you who are snowed in, we're glad you're here with us. And next we have Dr. Mary Ann Martin. She's coming in from warm and balmy Southern California, and she also splits time at Las Vegas. So she's in nicer weather most of the time. She is a beautiful endocrinologist and has been in practice over 20 years, married to a wonderful man and 2 darling children. And Dr. Marianne also finished medical school when she was about 12. So that's pretty awesome. So we're so lucky to have you both with us.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
It's fun to be here. Yeah.
Awesome. So what we want to do is just make sure everybody's understanding. We love, love, love seeing everybody's wonderful hellos in the chat. Feel free to use the chat to comment and everything. But if you have a question for us, go over to the Q&A portal. That's where we get our questions from. And we would love to take your questions and we'd love to answer them live. So we want to get as many as we can in. So jump right in and ask a question. So we have the first one coming in, was actually sent in previously, and this has to do with liver enzymes. And somebody was asking why, when you go on the program initially, sometimes we see a little rise in liver enzymes, and they're talking about the 5-in-1 plan and what that means exactly. So do either of you feel comfortable going there?
I have to start. We see this very commonly in the beginning of the program. In the first few weeks, the liver enzymes can have a little bump up. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's not that you're having alcohol on the sly. But usually what happens is if you stay true to being on plan, in another few weeks, the liver enzymes not only go back to normal, but as the body weight goes down and as the inflammation reduces, your liver enzymes tend to go even lower than what your original baseline was before you started program.
Beautiful.
Jan, I wanted to add too, the enzymes being abnormal can certainly point to fatty liver. That's a really um, difficult and important, thing that happens from people that struggle with weight. And it's really the largest cause of putting people on a transplant list, a liver transplant list. Most of them never come off the transplant list because there just aren't enough livers to go around. But it's a really serious condition that we have control over if we get rid of that body fat. So,
Yes, especially with our new claims that we can actually make with visceral fat and being able to reduce
mhm.
visceral fat by 14% the first 16 weeks of being on the 5-in-1 program. It's amazing. And there are other programs that also can target that visceral fat as well under the Optavia umbrella. But you're right, Delia, that there are definitely ways we can control that. So thank you both for that. The next question was having to do with dialysis and any contraindications with the program if you are currently on dialysis.
So as- for me, that wouldn't be an absolute contraindication. I personally have coached clients on Optavia who are on dialysis, but what's the most important thing is to involve your healthcare provider, your kidney specialist. Let them know what program you're on, the amount of protein that you'll be having. Are there any restrictions when you're on the dialysis days to your fluid or your electrolytes? So it's a very fine balance. But I'll tell you, any specialist, whether it's a kidney specialist, a heart specialist, whoever you're seeing for whatever the special condition is, they're going to be so thankful that you're already making the steps towards better health. And they will want to know as much as they can about what you're doing so they can also help you in your success. So, working with your coach, working with your special doctor, that creates such a wonderful partnership where everyone's in it to win.
Perfect. That's such a great answer. Love that. That one came from Jillian, actually. And the first one came from TJ. And there's another piece to that one about the liver enzymes. We see a couple more in the chat asking about cholesterol and why cholesterol might raise initially when people are first experiencing fat burn. So, either one of you want to speak to that?
Well, I just want to say that, when people struggle with weight, two of the things that are very prominent in their medical background is high cholesterol, high triglycerides, um, a high LDL, the less favorable cholesterol, a low HDL, which is a favorable cholesterol. So all of those things, we normally, as people are on the program, they're eating better, they're nourishing their body throughout the day. The scale's moving, they're losing those pounds, they're reducing their visceral fat, they're improving, their liver and the other organs that are involved with this visceral fat, that you'll see those enzymes come down. So whatever happens at the beginning, um, and I always kind of warn people, when you start on the program, you don't want to rush to your doctor and start getting an evaluation, get the evaluation before you start so you know where you're starting. But the lab work should come later, at least wait a month or maybe a couple of months because what you see at the beginning can just be, some temporary spikes as your body is kind of adapting to a new way of eating and so forth.
And
Wonderful.
thing I wanted to add is
Mm.
anytime you have fat loss, it's going to release cholesterol in the bloodstream. And so that's an important thing to remember that sometimes having that little spike in your cholesterol is actually a sign of success. And think of it this way: weight loss is going to stir the pot before it cleans it.
Yes, that's very good. Love that. I remember Laurie Anderson said the same thing about, and Dee, you can maybe validate this. Estrogen is also released when fat cells are, when you're in fat burn and burning. And so sometimes there will be little strange things, like maybe for female clients, little spotting here and there. And it can just be a little bit of that estrogen bump that's causing that. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of my favorite topics since I'm not an internal medicine physician, I'm an oncologist. But I always describe our body fat as a toxic dump yard. It stores pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, lead, PCBs, and it stores estrogen. And so, in a very small percentage of women, when they start on program, and I'm talking about postmenopausal women, when they start on program, they sometimes will experience vaginal bleeding. So they'll have some breakthrough bleeding, and that always raises a red flag. Is there something serious going on? I always tell people to see your GYN just in case, because one of the um, cancers that we see more often in women that struggle with weight, uterine cancer, which we also call endometrial cancer. And that is certainly a cancer stimulated by that estrogen dominance. We call it estrogen dominance, that estrogen that is stored in body fat.
Mhm.
So as the weight uh, comes down, all those toxins are released, including estrogen. So breakthrough bleeding can certainly happen. But also, because my background is breast cancer, I also want to point out that women who struggle with weight have um, a higher incidence of breast cancer, and we can reduce that pretty dramatically by achieving a healthy weight. Um, so it's that estrogen dominance that stimulates the breast to and puts it at risk for cancers of the ovary, uterus, and breast.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for bringing that out. And also, I noticed that Cliff just said, can you do a little myth busting around soy and breast cancer? Because there's a lot of bad press. And even though we try to help that to be, just cleared up, we need to
Yeah.
hear from you, Dee.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite topics, actually. And I've got a couple of very short YouTube videos on soy and breast cancer. Um, but one thing that we oftentimes hear, and all of us, Jan and Marianne and myself, we've all heard it from people. Well, I have a family history of breast cancer, or I've had breast cancer. Um, or I heard that, soy increases the risk of breast cancer. And actually, it's the complete opposite. There are hundreds of published studies showing that women who consume soy, and the earlier they consume soy, the better. So if children are raised, drinking soy milk, or they start, using it as teenagers or whatever, those people have actually a lower incidence of breast cancer. So the reason why soy kind of gets a bad rap and people get worried about soy is because of the word phytoestrogens. So there are natural plant estrogens in soy. Those have nothing to do with the estrogens in our body fat that predispose us to breast cancer. They actually have a protective effect. So the protective effect seems to come from um, the receptors that estrogen binds to, and the phytoestrogens can bind to those receptors and actually prevent, the estrogen from our body fat from feeding those cancer cells. So it's a little bit complicated, but just know that women who consume soy, if they've already had a history of breast cancer, actually have higher survival rates, lower recurrence rates, and a lower incidence of breast cancer.
Love it. So good to always set the record straight. Thank you so much. Okay, so we've got one from, let's see, Patty here. Patty asks, can you discuss cortisol and how it makes staying healthy so difficult? Dr. Marianne, you want to take that one?
I don't think it's the cortisol that makes it difficult. It's how we manage our cortisol that really makes it difficult. So, cortisol is like walking a very tight rope, and the balance that you need is very fine. If you have too much cortisol, you're going to feel amped up. You might feel jittery. It might cause you to have issues falling asleep. You're going to store more belly fat. Your sugars go up. On the other hand, if you don't make enough cortisol, you tend to be quite fatigued, and it's hard to motivate yourself to move your body. And so this is why I love having the Life book and the Habits of Health book, because our program isn't just about the food. It is really about how we're setting ourselves up for success, starting with our mindset. And I think one of the most important things to regulate our cortisol is how we go to bed, because how we go to bed and how we prepare for that will set us up for how we wake up in the morning. So if we're going to bed after 11 p.m., that actually causes a lot of hormone dysregulations. And your hormones require going to bed at a certain hour so that it can reset and restore. And a lot of people used to tell me, but I get 8 hours of sleep. I just go to bed at 1 and I wake up at 9. That's causing metabolic damage and hormonal chaos.
Jan, I wanted to say one more thing about cortisol.
Mhm.
So I like to say there are two hormones that are fat storage hormones, and one of them is cortisol. So if people are stressed, if they have a lot going on and they're pumping out cortisol throughout the day, maybe it's because of how they show up at work and they interact with coworkers, or they get up in the morning and they're feuding with their husband or their kids or whatever. So you're um, pumping out cortisol. Cortisol is a fat storage hormone. So if you're producing cortisol throughout the day, you're going to be storing fat. And the other hormone that does that is insulin. So when people um, are eating, white bread or a bagel or a donut, white pasta, then those are broken down and blood sugars rise. And when blood sugars go up, insulin follows to bring those blood sugars down. And insulin is a fat storage hormone. So those are two hormones you want to keep at bay, cortisol and insulin. Otherwise, you're going to struggle with the scale moving and all of the other wonderful, metabolic improvements that happen when we move that scale.
Wow, these are so great. This is so great for everyone to understand how these hormones interact and what they do in the body. Thank you guys so much. Okay, let's move on to, okay, Susan has a question. My recent blood work is great, but all the stats on my metabolic scale are bad. Why is that?
I think we'd need a little bit more information to be able to answer that.
I'm thinking that too, and also maybe just a little bit more time, as she's maybe been on plan and things have improved with her blood work. It takes time to turn that ship around, and she's going to see those improvements on that metabolic scale as time goes on. Maybe that would be my guess.
The other thing, Jan, that I want to bring up is a lot of people are using the metabolic scales these days, and I know they provide useful information, but more accurate is a DEXA scan. So when we go to have our bone density done, ask the question before you schedule that appointment. Um, is it a state-of-the-art DEXA scan that will not only show bone density, but it also shows percent body fat and it shows your visceral fat. So the DEXA scans, they're just very sophisticated nowadays, and they're just, oh my gosh, they add a whole nother layer of useful information
Right.
that you're paying for the scan anyway. You might as well get these additional pieces.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe
And
go to a little more adept scanner to see what you're getting there. Yeah.
although
Doctor.
I'm just going to add a little old school tip, which is if you don't have access to a body composition scale or a DEXA, one thing that we all can do, which is incredibly affordable, is to get a tape measure and measure your waist circumference
Yeah.
because that's going to tell you more about visceral fat and insulin resistance in the cheapest way. And so, just as a guideline, for women, we want to keep our waist circumference below 37 inches, and for men, below 41.
Great. Great. Just
That
back to
sounds
basics.
too easy, Marianne.
I know, we got to
Yeah,
start somewhere.
right.
Okay,
No,
there
but
was a
that's so
question.
wonderful.
I saw a question go by that's asking about the essential amino acids. This is a really good question. If either of you know, I'm not sure. Would the essential amino acids react differently with kidneys? You know how we have to be careful with kidneys and protein intake if we have kidney disease. Would the essential amino acids be a different thing, and be less hard on kidneys than maybe say a piece of chicken?
I don't think that you can categorize those as different sources. They're made from the same building blocks. So I think the most important thing, again, if there's any concern with the kidneys, is to make sure that you've talked to your doctor about what is the right protein intake, what is my water goals. Those are the two most important questions.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Let's go to Deanna. Does whey protein cause digestion or constipation issues? And she says her thoughts are that there is more than what is being said. So I think it depends on the person and if they have sensitivity to whey or um, go ahead.
I want to bring up too. I'm not a big whey protein person. I know that, a lot of people that are trying to build muscle and so forth. And we have to remember that the amino acids are the building blocks of muscle. Um, but I also want to point out that, especially when we are going through transition and maintenance, when our clients are going through transition and maintenance, there is protein in plants. And so it doesn't, especially when you're doing that, the long-term eating plan, we can do more of a plant-based diet, which is so incredibly healthy. And it's so funny because a lot of times people will say, well, where do you get the protein? But when you think about some of the biggest animals on the planet, hippopotamus, gorillas, giraffes, they're 100% plant-based. And so you can get great, sources of protein from beans and lentils and, it's just endless. So I'm more of a plant-based person. Soy is another source of plant-based protein, and most of our products are soy-based. So that's good to know. But, while you're on program, following that as closely as you can. If you are plant-based, if you are vegetarian, if you are vegan, there are recipes that, and there's also a Facebook support page for people that are plant-based and vegan, and as they're doing the 5-in-1 program.
Oh, that's awesome. Good to know. Wonderful. So let's really quickly hit. We got a couple more, and then we're almost out of time. It goes by so fast. Um, so the question is, should you eat protein before or during drinking essential amino acids? And I'll just quickly answer this one. I think it's best to try to space that out because you're getting amino acids from the amino acid supplement, the drink, and from your protein, and you want to separate those times out during the day so that your body has not too much at one time. Just separate them so you have maybe amino acids in the morning when you do your exercise, amino acids at lunchtime if you're doing a lean and green or a whey shake at that point, or the other way around. Like if you're doing your lean and green at night, you'd have your whey shake during the day. Like if you're doing that program, split them up so that you have 3 separate times during the day or 2 separate times during the day so that your body has a chance to create muscle protein synthesis. So, and then here's one. Someone's asking, Wendy's asking about the negative impact of soda, regular and diet. Can you please explain why we should avoid them and what we can use to replace them besides plain water?
So, as an endocrinologist, I preach this all the time that diet soda was the biggest hype and dupe that ever was created because it is so much sweeter than what regular sugar is. And your body is fooled into getting this huge dopamine hit. And when you're getting those huge dopamine hits because of the high amount of artificial sweetener, you're not going to be able to stop eating at the right time. You're going to want more of a dopamine hit. Usually, when you have a diet soda, you're going to crave either more sweets or more salty. And so, my go to when I'm trying to transition someone off soda, regular or diet, is iced tea is great. Or you can do the carbonated, waters. And I like to just put my own slices of fruit. I actually don't even like the flavored ones. I just like to let it naturally infuse. And there's going to be a transition period for people who regularly have soda, but it is so worth it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And oh my goodness, darn, there's one more. I'm just going to throw it out there and we can do it in 30 seconds. Vitamin D. I have 2 people who've mentioned to me lately that they have really high levels of vitamin D. They don't take any supplements other than being on the 5-in-1. Should they make changes or worry about this?
I'm going to cover that because I've had people that have said to me they had high levels of vitamin D, but when you get blood work done and you see the range. So for vitamin D, normal or healthy is 30 to, I think, 70. And so when people are at that higher end of the spectrum, sometimes their physician even tells them, oh, you're too high. But 30 is too low. So, vitamin D is really important for bone function and our bone density. And I'm just like a fanatic about my posture, and I'm a big yoga person. But I see so many people, they walk like this, yet they even have trouble straightening their spine. They're probably vitamin D deficient, but yeah, the range should be more like 40 to 70 in that range, and 20 and 30 is way too low. But most people need a supplement unless you live in, the sun belts and you're on the beach without sunscreen for the first, 30 minutes or so. If you're out with sunscreen all the time, then you're going to be blocking vitamin D production of the sun and the skin. So a supplement is probably necessary for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. So thank you both so much. Appreciate you being on with us, and time always goes by. We're sorry if we did not catch everyone's questions, but hopefully we answered many and have helped you understand your body and your health better tonight. And be sure, if you haven't already, be sure that you subscribe to our Optimal Health community channel and be a part of that. We're also on YouTube, and we'd love to have you go in and subscribe there as well. And don't miss next week. We are going to be talking about celebrating your health with the football game coming up and all the fun parties. We want to make sure we cover those bases and help you get some great ideas. And I heard rumblings that we're going to have a new intro music next week. So Chris, behind the scenes, always does so many cool things for us, and we just appreciate him so much. But Dr. Marianne, Dr. Delia, thank you again for being with us tonight on Let's Talk. And everyone, put a big thank you in the chat for them. We appreciate them so much. And let's have a great night. And we'll see you next week on Let's Talk. Thank you, everyone.